Okay, welcome to the go-to session, the first of two for week three. I'll mostly be focusing on one of your readings you had to do this week, and then we'll focus on some of the shorter activities you need to complete for the week. First, let me kind of go over what we need to cover in this session, as well as answer some of the good questions that came up in the chat. But I want to spend some time talking about the 9 elements of digital citizenship, which is a real quick web-based reading that you're supposed to do for this week, and then the DGL cold case discussion, which I'll talk about in some depth, is a graded activity. It's a 5% discussion activity, and I want to explain one of the other discussions that's ungraded, but it perhaps needs a bit of explanation in order to completely make sense. And then, as always, we'll leave things open to questions at the end. Okay, about the team debate things. Okay, so Team A and Team B have already kind of finished their statements. I posted them to Team C's discussion board. I hope people noticed that over the weekend. I think I put them up there on Saturday. Um, Team C needs to get back to me. In theory, they're supposed to have it finished by tonight, but let me know how that's going. But Angelica actually asked a pretty good question that applies to all the teams. Don't freak out right now by the big red exclamation points appearing on your FSO activity screen, telling you that something's late and that something hasn't been graded. It's just because I haven't graded it yet. Okay, I need to basically. I don't even want to grade Team A and Team B's work until Team C kind of responds. So I'm sort of waiting for the entire activity to come to fruition and finish, and then yeah, I'll go back in there, assign grades, clear the mess off that board. So don't freak out if you were an active member of your team. You nothing's late. You haven't failed. It's just a matter of me going in there and entering scores. Okay. I know it gets a little bit confusing. There are some small minor issues with FSO that really I don't think can be fixed, but you as an instructor have to create workarounds, and one of them is this. It's a discussion activity that has clear due dates, but if I don't enter a grade by a certain point, it makes students freak out because they think they're late or they're failing. You're not. So Team C, get back to me. Send me a message after this session through FSO. Let me know how the team's progressing. I mean, if I need to, I can extend things as late as tomorrow. After all, Team A and Team B got until Saturday to do their part. Um, but I'm happy with the way things have been going. I mean, I did take a peek into both boards for Team A and Team B, and I was happy to see that people were being productive. People were exchanging information. The board seemed alive, so that's good to see. And hopefully, Team C will announce a winner soon. Okay, so let's kind of continue with today's agenda. Okay, so you have this web-based reading. It's called the 9 elements of digital citizenship. Some of you actually already came across this article just when you were doing the DIGO assignment, because when you were looking up terms like digital citizenship, one of the first results that comes up is this article. So it's a pretty important article, which is why we assign people to read it. Oh, you know what? Before I even get into this, and let me get off this slide. One more reminder, and this doesn't apply, I think, to everybody in the room, but I'll still mention it because people who watch the recording after the fact will find it useful. For people who haven't handed in their 2.5 assignment yet, the last one, the Researching Credible Connections assignment, you always have 3 days to get things in. There's a 10-point penalty for each day that it's late, but you still are allowed to hand in the work. So for people who haven't handed in that assignment, you have until tomorrow night. And yeah, there's a point deduction taken off, but it's always better to get things handed in, even if okay, a grade of 60 might not sound very high, but people can recover from a 60. It's much tougher to recover from a 0. So I encourage people to get the work in, even if it's late, even if it's not perfect. Hand that stuff in, okay? Because I did notice it was a bit shocking. Like week one, 24 out of 25 people handed in the digital identity project where you create your own vision, right? And the Digo thing was also pretty solid. Most people eventually got something handed in, but like half the people didn't hand in the 2.5 assignment. So I do want people to get that turned around and handed in. Okay, so the 9 elements of digital citizenship. You don't have to read what's on the slide. This is actually taken from that article. Although, if you want to read the slide, you'll kind of kill two birds with one stone because you could technically complete the reading during the session. I'm not going to go over every word of the article. That's why you can read it, but I just want to stress some main points. So, for example, one of the elements is digital access, which basically refers to like who can access the internet, who cannot. and the importance of access in the 21st century. We're getting to that point almost like during the 1960s, where maybe it was only a few families during the 50s who had televisions, but by the 1960s or so, pretty much every family did. We're reaching that point with mobile technology. So maybe not everybody has a full desktop computer or even a laptop, but most people have something that can get them online. But of course, that requires access. So my first question to you, and you can use the chat box to type your answer, or you can raise your hand, is what do you think influences access to the internet? Like, what kind of factors could play a role in determining how easy it is for people to access what we all just commonly do without even thinking about it? Any thoughts about that? Okay, Kevin mentions a pretty big one, right? Economic status. Um, I'm not tremendously wealthy, but I can afford to have regular and fast internet connection. Do you know people still who don't have access? Is it a bigger issue, or does everyone you know pretty much have availability in 2014? Or are there people out there who, they have to make tough decisions, right? If it means feeding your children, you'll choose that above a fast internet connection. Although that's not always the case. But do you know people who still do not have the ability, for economic reasons, to access the things that we all are able to do, like right now, via this session? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, JC, you have a friend, and is it for economic reasons? Is he young and just can't afford it, or doesn't care about it? Yeah, so economic reasons can play a pretty big role. And if we think about larger than just the United States, obviously it can depend on certain countries. Certain countries are worse off than others, where it's not just a sort of natural right for people to have access to these things. Obviously, there are some countries that are a bit more restrictive, so people just literally don't have access because they're not allowed to. So if you live in North Korea, you're not going to be able to use the Google machine to do many things. Other countries give access, but they also block lots of sites, so that could play a role. Any other issues that might influence access? Does age play a role, do you think? Are there still people out there who, maybe not for financial reasons, but just for generational reasons, aren't interested in access or don't care about making the switch? Do people have grandparents that are like this? Like, I can't remember if I shared this anecdote, but my mom's like nearly 70, but she's actually pretty with it when it comes to technology. Like, she's got her tablet. Yeah, Angelica's. That sounds similar to me. Your grandmother uses it more than you do. So there are those people. But then there are people like my dad. He's in his early 70s. He could care less. Like, eventually my mom had to teach him how to do basic things. Like, my family's from Chicago, so it's like Chicago Bear country. So my dad will go online to read about, like, sports stories about the Bears. But otherwise, he has no interest, like zero interest. And yeah, it's probably a generational thing. In part because if people are saying my mom's a Facebook addict, yeah, my mom's kind of like that too. Not a Facebook addict, but she's, God, she knows how to download pirated things. She's all over the place. But then there are other people who, don't even know how to use a mouse and don't care to. So for them, it's not an issue of that they don't have access; they just don't want access. But also think of access in even broader terms, not just in terms of who can afford it, who can't, which countries allow access, which ones don't. But it also keeps in, it also plays a part in things like students who have various disabilities, right? So if you're blind, how do you create materials that are accessible to them, right? Or someone who's deaf. It's something that Full Sail's is like super aware of, because we have plans in place to deal with, not deal with, that sounds like you're putting up with something, but to accommodate those kinds of students. For example, making lecture notes available that we normally wouldn't, just because in presentation form it's fine for most students, but others don't have literally that biological access to it in that form, so you have to give it in another way. Yeah, Kevin, your comment reminds me of an anecdote. Like a couple years ago, I bought not one but two iPod touches for my daughter. I can't remember if I shared this anecdote already. I forget which anecdotes I share and which ones I don't. But the idea was that she wasn't quite old enough to really have a cell phone, but an iPod pretty much functions like a cell phone. It just doesn't make calls, so she could do things like FaceTime and send texts and all that kind of stuff, download apps. Um, but here's how naive I was. I thought that she would need instruction on how to do it. But no, she just picked up the thing, started swiping up, down, right, left. She was actually probably more comfortable with it than I was. So yeah, different world. Okay, next. Digital commerce. Like, this is a big thing. Do we have anybody here who buys online more than they do in traditional stores? Do we have anybody like that here? Do we have people who almost don't like to go into stores because it's so much easier to just go online and with the click of a button get stuff shipped to your house? Or has anybody sold things online? Okay. One person says, yes, I love online shopping. I think yeah, maybe it depends on what you're shopping for. I have Amazon Prime, which is horrible because it gives you 2 free day shipping, which just encourages you to buy things because it's like, well, it's free shipping, and I get it in 2 days. Uh, I mean, there are certain things that really aren't ideal for online, like foodstuffs and things like that. Yeah, books I almost entirely buy online. I guess here's the important thing. If it's something I desperately want right now, like I don't even have the patience to wait 2 days, I'll head out somewhere and buy it. I'll get that book from Barnes and Noble, or I'll go to GameStop and purchase a video game that came out because I don't even want to wait the 2 days. Or I don't even want to wait for like the download of the game. You can purchase games online now, but I don't even want to wait for that. But yeah, it's online shopping is pretty much normal. Angelica buys things for her pets. Oh, you know when it came into a role, like I finally joined the phone generation, and like every store you go to, like the cases begin at like $15. I don't want to pay $15 for a case, but great, Amazon.com, I got a terrific one for like $7. So this is like the reality too, right? Like, in some ways it's sad because Kevin says he misses buying hardback books. Some of us miss, like, again, it's a generational thing, but I can remember stores. Like J.C. Penney was important, and now J.C. Penney's struggling to stay alive. I remember Radio Shack. Radio Shack is biting the dust. As much as I love online commerce, it is kind of sad that we're losing a world, I guess. And that's the reality, is that some things die off, other things replace it. Uh, Borders, yeah, they shut down all their stores a couple years ago because they just couldn't stay in business. And there was something tremendously sad about that because I thought Borders actually had a better selection than Barnes and Noble did. Uh, but hey, that's what happens. But I sort of do miss those memories of like department stores, and we just seem to be getting away from that. Like there's an entire generation that if you say the word J.C. Penney, they think of like their grandma going in to buy a floral print shirt or something, right? I mean, people aren't really into that so much anymore. Although I guess clothing still does survive. I mean, I know you can shop online, but most people want to try on what they wear before they buy it or see how it looks in the mirror. Okay, and some people have sold things online. It's been a while since I've done so, but yeah, I've done the eBay thing, etc. Okay, a couple of these I'm just going to kind of skim past because you can read them on your own. Okay, so the importance of digital communication, the different options we have to be able to talk with people. For example, what we're doing right now, and how to deal appropriately given the communication form. So I might speak in a completely different way if I don't really troll the way that trolls do, but if I go onto my ESPN to brag about my team winning on Saturday in college football or something, like I might take a different tone and style than I'm doing with you right now. But yeah, lots of communication options and different ways for handling those situations. Angelica says, "What happens when all this technology dies on us? It's sad that research." Yeah, that's I don't know. Maybe other people can weigh in. Like I don't know if technology is ever just going to die on us completely, and technology seems to be better in the sense that like our smartphones really do work for a while. I miss the physical. Like I don't really have any interest in buying CDs, like physical CDs. I love that everything's digital, but it kind of makes me sad. Like it used to be that you could show people your record collection back when they had records. People could skim through it, or people could look at your CD rack, or they could look at the books on your shelves. Like, what happens when it's all digital? I mean, if you take good care of a book or a record, like it can play forever. You can always pick up that book and read it. If you have a record player, right, a turntable, you can always put that record on and listen to it. But you know, if I download the newest Taylor Swift song, which is awesome, by the way, will I really have that for the next 40 years? Do I own that in the way that I would own a CD in the past? Or is it somehow more amorphous? Or does it even matter anymore to own things? Because in theory, you'll always have access to something. Like you could go onto YouTube and listen to your favorite song without having to purchase it. So maybe I'm thinking too sort of old school. Digital literacy. Okay, that's the focus of this course, right? Literacy is more than just learning tools and technologies, but it's like how to be responsible with all these things that keep seemingly appearing every day, brand new. Um, I think I mentioned this in week one, but it's really a matter of taking the concepts of citizenship. Like we don't just walk out our door and troll people. We don't just walk out our door and yell obnoxious things at people. I mean, people do that, but we typically think we would previously consider them crazy. But it's sort of commonplace online. So it's really, digital literacy also involves, how do you conduct yourself. Citizenship also extends to the non-real world, if you want to call it that. And continuing along the same line, right? This involves issues of digital etiquette, appropriate versus inappropriate behavior, um, right? The kind of rules or regulations that kind of guide our how we act. Um, I won't get too much in this. Anybody want to be brave and admit? I don't. It seems like I've been pretty harsh on it, but do we have any people who love to troll online? do Do we have people who love to act inappropriate online? And can you make a case for, hey, you need that sort of outlet or valve? That, hey, as long as you're not hurting people in the true sense, or that there's a place to unwind a bit and act inappropriately given the right context online. Or should we always be following proper etiquette? Okay, Kevin says his nephew loves to. Right, I hear. Like, I'm not into online gaming at all. Like, I play lots of video games, but I'm just not. Again, it might be my age. I'm just not into putting on a headset and playing with 13-year-olds. But I hear that's a big part of that community. Like, it can get pretty obnoxious. I don't know. I use kind of common sense. I think there's kind of good spirited, ribbing, and then there's just ugliness. And I do think that ugliness is probably good to avoid in most kind. And you know what I mean by ugliness. I mean, you see these people, right? I mean, people just write the most hateful, sexist, homophobic, racist things possible, and they would never say these things if they weren't anonymous. Um, which is why, and I've heard people tell me that it's a mistake, but I actually use my real name. Now you can log into so many forums and discussion boards just using your Facebook account that, like, I just use my real name. It keeps me more responsible. It doesn't mean that I can't tell a joke or gently, like, make fun of someone because they lost to my favorite team or something. I think there's space for that. The way that colleagues in a work situation might tease one another because they're friends, or it's clearly a joke. But yeah, I mean, always kind of being under my real name and profile helps me not be inappropriate. But there's an entire other argument too, which is that the internet's power comes from anonymity, and that people need space to say things that maybe would get them in trouble in other areas, and not necessarily the ugly sorts of comments. But imagine, I don't know, imagine you're working for a company that has very, very strong conservative values. Would you want to post something, even if it's not offensive, that sort of goes against those values online? So I do understand you have to be careful with some of these things. Um, But yeah, at least be aware of these issues of etiquette and how you're carrying yourself. Um, a lot of people have overshared on Facebook, or they've posted that comment that they then regret and need to take down. So think these things through. Okay, digital law, right? The rules and guidelines often codified into actual laws that are on the books that apply to online activity. I'm not, well, actually, I am going to ask who here has pirated something? Music, games, films, television shows. No one? You're all that completely honest? Kevin's pleading the fifth. Angelica says music. Right. I'm in an awkward position because I'm the instructor and I don't want to encourage bad behavior. Let's just say that there might be someone who's similar to me that may have at times um, access certain things. Uh, Most people have. I mean, occasionally I do have students who are really, really rigorous and haven't, but I mean, most people have if they're being honest. Some of us don't do it that regularly, but it's pretty rare to find someone who hasn't. But it goes beyond just like piracy issues because I think we're still navigating all that. I mean, there is pressure now on companies to find alternative means. Like I don't pirate games because I have a PlayStation Plus account. It's $5 a month. It's like, why would I waste time searching out pirated versions of things and waiting for the download and not trusting if it's a safe file or not when I could just pay the $5? And I think you're seeing the music industry go toward that as well, right? Like you have free versions of Spotify or Pandora or iHeartRadio, and if you want stronger privileges, you can just pay whatever it is, the $9.99 a month, and you can download it to your iPod and take it with you or your phone, create your own playlists and pick out your own individual songs. So I do think that the business is responding with alternative models that won't completely eliminate piracy, but at least it's giving people tempting options. Like I really don't download music illegally because a YouTube is like the greatest jukebox in the world. I know it's not the most user friendly thing. It's not something you can really download to your phone and listen to it whenever you want. But it's great when, hey, I haven't heard of that song for 20 years, but it just occurred to me. Boom, it's probably on YouTube. And you can create playlists and things like that. So we're kind of working through the piracy issue because I think it's difficult to just yell at people and say, never do this if the companies themselves aren't responding with alternatives, and they're starting to do that. Notice that it applies to more than just piracy, right? Things that we universally agree are pretty bad, like hacking, stealing people's private information, or things that apply to this school, like plagiarizing. Uh, Plagiarizing is both more prevalent, but at the same time easier to catch because so many people just head online and find stuff and copy and paste. Um, Whereas in the old days, maybe plagiarism didn't happen as often, but it was harder to catch because people would just take things from books, and the instructor would actually have to go to the library, find the book, and see. Um, but okay, it covers these things as well. Digital rights and responsibilities, I'll just kind of skim past, but you do have some basic rights that apply. Again, they apply to the real world, and they also apply to the virtual world, like your right to privacy. That's been a big topic recently with the NSA, right? Should the government be collecting your phone calls, your texts, etc.? But your right to free speech is also protected online, just as it is in the real world. It doesn't mean that you're not free from consequences. Lots of people confuse that. They think free speech means I get to say whatever I want and you're not allowed to respond, or you're not allowed to take action. If you get online and post something really terrible about your employer, yeah, your free speech rights are still protected in the sense that, yeah, you won't be arrested or sent to jail because of what you said, but your employer has a perfect right to decide, you know what, I don't think that was cool. So free speech is not the protection. It protects you to say whatever you want and not be jailed for it, but it's not freedom from all consequences. So a lot of these basic rights that apply to us in the real world also apply online. Digital health and wellness. I'm lucky. I don't really have many issues, even though I've spent a lot of my life in front of screens. But is there anybody here who has suffered from things like eye fatigue, Carpal tunnel syndrome. Does anybody need like ergonomic chairs or desks? Coders need it a lot, like people who are here to study mobile app uh, design or people who are here to study game design have these issues. We have anybody who falls in that category here? Where like technology is taking your toll on it? You? Okay, bad eyes, but just genetic. Um, yeah, but I'm not just trying to deliver like a public service announcement. For some people, it's a real concern. So be aware of those things. Okay. Digital security. I'm not gonna say much about this. Okay, good examples. Kevin says this girl has epilepsy. Jason said carpal tunnel. Okay, so yeah, real issues. And I always get, I don't get annoyed, but I always kind of when I boot up a game on the PlayStation 3, it's like, oh, come on, get past the announcement about, video games may cause seizures. But people really do have to pay attention to those things if they suffer from a condition. Okay, digital security. I think we've had computers around for so long. Everybody, you're all protecting your stuff, right? You know about virus protection, backing up your data, all of that. By the way, when you do get if you stay enrolled in Full Sail and make it to month 5, you'll get your launch boxes, meaning that you'll get your MacBook Pro. The great thing about Mac, I was a PC user pretty much all my life, is that Apple has a really, really strong security system in place. Like viruses are just not a problem. And they're not an issue, in part because the security is pretty solid, and in part because hackers go after the systems that are most used, and because Apple's I forget what the most current version is, Mavericks. It's not being used on the majority of systems that people use throughout the world, so that's not the one that hackers really spend their time uh, trying to mess with. So that's one of the great things about the MacBook Pro. But if you're still using a PC, it's pretty important to know about those things. Uh, Backup of data is huge, but that's great because now we have so many cloud-based services. In the past, you had to go spend money on endless thumb drives and endless external hard drives. That was just annoying. But now we can quickly back up data through the cloud. But okay, in 2014, you guys know that. So let's turn our attention to a couple of the activities you need to do this week. The first thing is this thing called the cold case activity. This is a discussion. And what it asks you to do is to kind of get in your time machine. I just watched, by the way, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. So if you saw that movie deals with time travel. So you're going to be getting in your own Wayback Machine, okay? And you're going to be going back to the 1920s, to the era of Prohibition. If you don't know about Prohibition, the assignment sheet covers it a little bit. And even though I've warned people away from like Wikipedia, Wikipedia is good when you need basic information on something. You're not going to cite it. You're not going to write a paper based on it, but you need to look up some quick facts. So if anybody needs some extra help, you can just Google like Prohibition in the United States, and it comes up with, you can read all about it. But basically, it's this period from 1920 to 1933 where an actual constitutional amendment was passed. And if I'm not sure how up to date people are, or how many of you have studied civics, because they no longer teach civics in high school. But it's extraordinarily difficult to get an amendment passed to the Constitution. Okay, but in this period, one was passed largely because of Christian temperist people, women mostly, Christian women who were tired of public drunkenness and men being drunk all the time. So pressure was put on lawmakers, the members of Congress, to actually pass a constitutional amendment that, yes, banned alcoholic beverages for a period of just over a dozen years. Okay? So you couldn't make alcohol, you couldn't sell it. It was just illegal. Much in the same way that like marijuana is illegal today, or other drugs, okay? So no access to alcohol. But you could probably guess what's happened. And most people kind of in general know what Prohibition was, but if you don't, you can read up on it. But what happens when you try to ban something like alcohol? Like, how's that going with marijuana? And I'm not taking a side on the issue. I'm not a drug user, but like, how effective does that typically work? Right. So we got this system in place, as Kevin said, called bootlegging, where the activity still went on despite the fact that it was illegal. Right. It's a little bit difficult to always have alcohol, at least with marijuana, which also has a problem. It's impossible to shut down, which is why I think there's this movement to legalize. But it's really difficult to take something that was legal, make it illegal, and completely stop it. But that's what happened for 13 years. So what you're being asked to do is kind of put yourself in a time machine, go back to the 1920s. So this is the era of the foxtrot, and those I forget what they were called, but they were miniskirts essentially, but there was a term to describe those girls. Flap? I can't remember the term. You would think I would have researched this before class, but I'm completely blanking. Flappers. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, that's what it was. Okay, so you're going back to that environment, whereas in the description states, law enforcement, bootleggers, smugglers, brewers, and citizens played a game of hide and seek. Right? Law enforcement, even though they hated this new law, they had to try to enforce it. Um, and at the same time, people who made money during this period, including crime organizations, continued to make it available. So it was a sort of cat and mouse game. Okay, so your job here is to sort of imagine yourself in this time period and think about what could have happened from both sides of the issue. So both in terms of law enforcement and bootleggers. How could they have used today's technology to sort of continue this hide and seek game, this cat and mouse game? Okay, that's essentially what you need to do. Um, Let me move my panel out of the way. So you're going to describe a scenario where you kind of mention the potential tools you think they could have used and how they would have used them. And just like any discussion, you'll make your response and then you'll respond to two other people thoughtfully. Okay, and I encourage people to have fun with the assignment. I mean, take it seriously. I would say the two big issues I see are people who either don't take it seriously, they just get on there and write two sentences. Oh, they would have sent each other texts, blah blah blah, and they just leave it at that. Or people are pretty creative, but I still want it to be serious as well. Okay, so really and some people get really into it because if you really examine it deeply, like any move that one side makes, the other side can move as well because they both, in theory, have access to the same technology. So people get into really, really in-depth scenarios dealing with encryption and I'm not going to reveal too much because it's your job to come up with the answers to these things, not me. But people can come up with some pretty original and interesting things. Um, the other thing I would remind people of is as always, but especially for this assignment, to make sure that you're following the rubric because it tells you what you need to do. So, for example, 30 points are awarded just for did you share ideas about how tools and technologies could have impacted the scenario. Okay, so like I want literal things mentioned. Again, some people are too vague, or they'll say, "Oh, they would have used computers, or they would have texted each other." It's like I want more concrete information than that. And as you can see, there's this word scenario here. So you're going to sort of, you don't necessarily have to create a specific scene, but you're getting involved enough in that time period that you're not just giving me a couple sentences on what they could have used. Oh, they could have used their smartphones, or they could have logged into Facebook. No, no, no. You're going to spend some time in that world and give us a sense of what it would have looked like and how these tools and technologies would have been used. Okay, and that's also what gets into number two here. Were alternate scenarios provided based on the tools mentioned? Okay, so you're getting into these scenarios. And then the other things that are always just common, right? You're responding to at least two classmates and do so thoughtfully. I mean, I know it's difficult because some people, it's like, oh, I have to respond. But if you really put yourself in the right mindset and, you know, get into whatever someone posted and then maybe make suggestions or embellish on what they've come up with, I mean, that's kind of the goal here to get the discussion board moving. And then grammar, punctuation, etc. So in essence, it's one of those assignments that's pretty simple and pretty basic. It's just you need to make sure that you're kind of hitting your marks and doing so with care. But it's kind of a time travel based discussion. So have fun with it, but also take it somewhat seriously. I'm curious to see what what things you'll come up with. Uh, okay, where do I need to go now? Oh, the activity board. Okay, so here's the main board for our class. Here's the stuff. Oh, by the way, here's just where what I was talking about earlier, right? Some people freak out because they see all these red marks. Do you see red marks on your end too when something's late? I think we have the same color symbols and the same indications, right? So don't freak out. It just means that I haven't got into grading it yet. I actually spent part of the time this morning cleaning up the earlier sections on the board. So if it was driving you crazy that other things were still showing up as late, like some people just never clicked off on, like they read the digital natives, digital immigrants article, but they just never clicked the complete button. So probably on their end it keeps showing up as late, but it's ungraded. I don't really take off points for that. So I did spend some time cleaning up the board. But okay, the other discussions you need to worry about this week, there's one on this reading, 9 Elements of Digital Citizenship, the reading we just went over, so you participate in there. We just talked about the cold case discussion, but there's another one called Location, Location, Location. It's a little thing that's related to what's called metadata, which is like the almost microscopic look at how data can be used nowadays. And I mean, I think the assignment sheet's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll give an example of how this works. Okay, so there's a TED Talk video to watch first, and again, it's pretty fascinating because it shows just to what degree we can examine things, right? And he even gives an overview in the beginning of the video where he's talking about just how much progress we've made in like the past dozen years in terms of like geolocation. And if you think about the earlier TED Talk videos, the way that people can verify information, for example, in the current Syrian civil war, just by using tools like Google Maps and zeroing in on that specific bridge and using the visual cues to sort of match it up with the real world data they have to verify whether the thing they were watching was true or not. A lot of that progress is made because of the advances we've made in terms of these various examples of metadata, which includes geolocation. And you had a vocabulary word that related to this. But basically, what you need to do is, you have this section. It doesn't appear on my side, but you have these images to look at. They're images of photos that were taken around the Full Sail campus. And you have to use this website, which I'm going to bring up right now, to find out information on these images, where they were taken. Okay, not all of you are on campus, but you can still use the information that's given to you to figure out not only when the photo was taken, but where it was taken on campus. That's kind of your task here, which is to take a look at each of the images contained in this folder, Full Sail Images, and sleuth out where they are. Okay, so it tells you can combine the data that you receive along with other clues using the Full Sail website to determine where the shots were taken on campus and to try to identify like even the building or location. And I'm going to give a quick example of how this kind of works, not using the Full Sail images, but using images of my own. And I guess I didn't open it. Okay, so there's this site called verexif.com. And what's really fascinating about this, and some people already know about this, but I always have lots of students who have no idea that these kinds of tools exist. You can take any picture that was taken with a digital device and find out lots of information about it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose something from my desktop. Oh, there's not good. I thought it was going to show me like a thumbnail version of it. These are so small I can't make sense out of it. Give me 2 seconds. I need to choose the right file. Where's my folder? There it is. Okay, so which ones did I want to choose for this? Okay, so 323 and bear with me. Maybe in the photos? I think this one might work. So let me move this one over here. Okay, so 9.2 and 3.23. Okay, sorry for the pause. Let me get back and try this out again. Okay, let's see if this works. If not, I'll have to choose yet another folder. Okay, so I've uploaded an image. I'm going to click on View EXIF. Come on. Okay, by the way, this is my kid, my daughter. So this is the point in the session where you're all supposed to go, oh. But look what happens here. Look at all the data that we get here. I don't know if people could see it or if the text is too small, but here's the camera make, Apple, the model, the iPod Touch, the date it was taken, September 2nd, 2013 at 3:53 p.m., the resolution, on and on and on, right? And it also gives you the GPS latitude, longitude, and etc. for where the picture was taken. So if you go to your map, maybe I have to double click on it. Yeah, there we go. If I double click on the location, it will take me right to Google Maps. And I can keep zooming in, zooming in. Right, it will take a moment for the image to clear. And maybe this data isn't 100% perfect because it was actually, let me move this out of the way. It was actually taken in this house right here, not this house, and it certainly wasn't taken outside in this next to the driveway. But it's still pretty darn close. Like there's my parents' house in Chicago, which is where this photo was taken, right? And all that information is available to you just from the photo. Now my question to you is, A, how many people knew you could do this already? And B, is that scary or is it not really a big deal that our devices make this information available to anybody who can, right? You submit a photo to Facebook, I can find out. I can find out where the picture is taken, where, when, what date. Some people are saying creepy. I don't know. I don't know if I understand Taylor's comment. I wish I knew this was a thing. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, I had no idea you could do that. And yeah, it's creepy. I guess it depends on context. Like if I doubt someone's that interested in finding out where my parents live in the Chicago suburbs. Okay, yeah, celebrities. There's a good point, right? And I guarantee you, most celebrities, if they didn't know, they have someone like a manager, an agent, maybe not the agent, but okay, a manager, someone who handles PR that knows all about this, right? Especially with the recent stories involving Jennifer Lawrence and like, not only is not anything, not how do I phrase this? Not only is everything always available online, even if you think you deleted it, like our devices reveal information about us that we're not aware of. So for someone like me, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, but it was sort of an eye opener when I first found out about this site because it's like, wow, I didn't know my device was doing that. And there is a way to turn off that information, but you would think that that would be like a default setting and then you could turn it on if you wanted it to. But we have so many devices in our homes now that report back data on us, right? Our computers do it. You think it's just an accident that certain messages you get to your email account or certain ads that appear on a screen appear for you, right? They don't appear for other people. Like, I don't know. I need to lose, okay, I admit it, I need to lose 15 pounds or so. And I might have looked for like articles on weight loss. Guess what suddenly starts appearing on every website that I visit? Right? It's like they're trying to make me feel bad. They're trying to remind me or something. And there are ways to clean up your system. There are programs. I don't know if it's still big, but there used to be one called AdAware that would remove things. Other things that remove this various spying programs from your computer. But lots of times, even just our basic devices report more information that we're not even aware of. So that's a really, really cool tool. But if I open up another picture, let me see. Let me choose another one. Okay, what was that? 323, I think I said. Okay, view EXIF. And you can see this one's a little bit different. So there's handsome me. There's both of my kids, right? So my daughter was 10, my son who's 6. And you can see it does include information, but it's not really revealing information. I don't really care that people know that I took it with an iPod Touch or at what time. But notice there's no GPS info. Why did that occur? Actually, I'll ask that as a question. Why did that occur? People are pretty smart. Why do you think that there's no GPS info for this one, but not the other one? And they're both taken with an iPod Touch. What could have influenced that? Because it wasn't a choice that I made. I didn't turn it off. It's not like I freaked out and said, I don't want information being revealed. I'll give the answer if some people can't figure it out. Most people do. Like, what's a big difference between the iPod Touch and, say, an iPhone? Okay, I'll just give the answer. Usually people can guess it out. Kevin said one phone is GPS. Yeah, that's kind of on the right track. iPod has some of those elements too, like you can map your destination to get driving directions or something. But it's something that I revealed earlier, that the reason I got an iPod Touch for my kid is because we didn't want her joining the cell phone generation, and it can do pretty much what an iPhone can. It just can't make calls. But the reason it doesn't make calls is because it's not always online, right? The way that our smartphones are. Our smartphones just know, like when I'm at home, it connects to my Wi-Fi. But if I head out to somewhere, like I don't know, the Demi Lovato concert last night, which was totally awesome, like it finds like an LTE tower to connect to, right? It's always on, but the iPod Touch isn't, right? That's one of the things we like about it. So when she's at home or when she's at my parents' house that day, yeah, her device was able to connect to the Wi-Fi. Here, this was taken on the road in a restaurant. There was no Wi-Fi, so it didn't report back that data on us. So yeah, think these things through. By the way, like I said, most people here seem to think it was creepy that you could find out this much information. Right? You're at the beach. You took a picture. Now anybody can know what beach you're at. Again, I'm not sure how many people care that much. After all, people post things to Facebook saying, "I'm here, I'm having dinner at such and such," and for whoever wanted to, they could just go, "Oh, okay, he or she is right now at this address." So yeah, sometimes we're reporting too much information about ourselves, but our devices do it as well. Okay, so there is this activity here where you get to play detective a little bit by going into the images and finding out. Actually, let's. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around. Let me see if I've never tried this. I should try it in real time. Unless it's going to take an hour for this thing to download. It's just images. Here, let me get that website open again. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I thought I could do this quickly. Here, let me drag this to my desktop. Boom. Okay, let me choose one of these images, try it out, see how this works. We'll just take the first one. And we'll open it and see what kind of information it gives us. Take your time. Website. When I need you to move fast, you don't. If this takes too long, I'll just cancel it. By the way, while we're waiting, do people have questions about anything that we've gone over in terms of what you need to do this week? The cold case discussion involving prohibition. Okay, you know what? Screw this. This is taking way too long. I feel so bad for the people who have to watch this after the fact. Okay, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's taken with an Apple iPhone 4 in 2013. We get our GPS information. Let's see what happens if I click on the actual location. I think the problem is I got too many things open here. Okay, there we go. Full Sail University. We can keep zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. I'm going to show off my lack of knowledge of the Full Sail campus. Okay, and look. This you would think I would have tried this in the past, but actually, it's a bit more helpful than I thought because some of the buildings are actually labeled, so you can figure out where lots of things are. And if you need to go to Full Sail edu and download a campus map to get more precise in your descriptions, you can do that. But okay, it's just a quick activity to show you the importance of that. Game development building, yeah. By the way, is there anybody here who's on campus or is going to be moving to campus soon? Okay, we just went over the location metadata activity. Questions involving, I don't know, the team debates, the misinformation debates in terms of the assignment that's due this past Sunday, the discussions you need to participate in and complete for this week. This week, I think, again, we have another major assignment coming up on Sunday, which I'll get into in Thursday's session. It's actually not as difficult to go over as the first two because at this point you have so many skills that what I'll cover more quickly on Thursday you'll be able to deal with, but we'll spend time on Thursday talk about other things as well. But it's kind of a lighter week, at least at the beginning. So I think most of it was kind of straightforward. But if anybody has questions, go ahead and ask. If you don't have questions, just say no, you don't have any questions. No questions, says Kevin. By the way, that's almost always everybody's answer. I just hope it's true. It's true that people don't have questions. It's not just that they want to get out of the room. Okay, so you know the routine. I'm going to stop the session right now.